Alright, so this one was fun. This is actually this is a complex that I have mentioned before. Uh, I think it's the one where I mentioned that the units, the buildings, are split even and odd, but there's no path between them, so you have to go around. So I think it's the first one that I mentioned about that. And there's a weirdness I've discovered since then about this complex. So some of the buildings are 2-story, and some of the buildings are 3-story. So this isn't about the story that the tale that occurred this evening, but it is something that I discovered a while back. The 3-story buildings, the top floor actually does have a hallway between the even and odd side. So on the first floor, it's a solid building. Second floor, it's a solid building, and some of the buildings that's as high as they go. But the ones that do have a third floor, there is actually a hallway between the evens and the odds. So it is possible to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right? You know, like that. This complex is wow. Okay. But so tonight's delivery to this complex involves the numbering of the buildings, right? So there's a main road, and this is set up, you know, so conventional. You know, conventional directions, right? So we've got north, that way. Okay, so this road runs east-west, right? Alright. There are 2 entries into the complex. This one has a roundabout. This one does not. Okay. So this one just has a gate. This one there's a gate here and a gate here. And then there's buildings like this. And there's buildings here. I'm probably going to get the number wrong. Yeah, I think this is pretty accurate. Or no. Wait. Yeah, I think these are 2 separate buildings, something like this. There's more buildings here. I'm not sure. Okay. I'm just trying to think of the numbers because the numbers are crazy. Alright, so this is blocked off, right, to the public here. I think this just kind of wraps around. Alright, so there's a road that goes around like this. Comes around and it breaks off here. So you can get to the exit there, or you can get to the exit there, or you can get to that exit. Right. So I come in this way. I enter here. There's a call box here, and I go through this gate. But the GPS, and I'm supposed to go to building 1. The GPS sends me here. Somewhere over here. It sends me over here somewhere. And I'm supposed to go to building 1. The lowest number building that I'm next to is building 7. I think it's here. It might be here. I think this is 8 and 9. It's something like this. My sureness of the numbers is pretty good over here. and these ones. This is 6, this is 5, this is 15, this is 14, this is 16, this is 13. Okay, so when I come in, it's dark, because it's like 8:15 or something at night, right? The sun has been down for a while, it's dark. When I come in, I can't see the building number here, here, or here. So I don't really know what's going on over here. I can see these ones. And so the GPS is telling me to go over here. So I'm not even thinking like, okay, the building I need to go to is over here, because the GPS is sending me over here. And in my experience, every time before, the GPS sent me right in front of the building that I needed to go to. So this wasn't a navigational issue before, right? But once I get all the way around, I discover I'm next to building 7, not 1. And I'm next to building 16, not 1. And I'm next to building 6 and 15 and 5, not 1. So where's building 1? Right. And I know from past experience over here we have 11 and 10, and there's a pool over here. Alright, I know from past experience that that's there, and I start walking around with the delivery, and I kind of get out here and I see building 14, and I'm like, well, this isn't really going in a good direction. And these distances are long. It's a long walk, and it's a large order, so it's getting uncomfortable, difficult for me to carry this, and it's going to just take me 20 minutes if I wander this all on foot. And before I even tried wandering on foot, I asked the customer, well, at first I was like, okay, this is building 7, so I drove down here next to building 5 and 15, and then I parked and I texted the customer asking, well, I can't find building 1. The GPS sent me to building 7. Can you maybe help me out, figure out how to get there? And they weren't. They were trying to be helpful, and nothing that they said was wrong. Right? It's a little bit better than that last one, where they were just like, come to the end. And then, that's not useful at all. It was more useful than that. The things that they were saying were more helpful, and they were not incorrect. It was just using landmarks that I don't know, because I don't know this complex that well. So, at one point I talked to a dude over here by the dumpsters, who apparently only speaks Spanish, and it's a dialect of Spanish that I'm not even familiar with. And he thought my Spanish sounded weird. He thought I was speaking a foreign language for a second with my Spanish, and he just kind of like stared at me. And he said something about how he's not a janitor and I should go to the office or something. I couldn't fully understand what he was saying, and he couldn't fully understand what I was saying, even when I was speaking in Spanish, and he spoke absolutely no English. So that was an interesting interaction that was quite fruitless. So I thanked him and just turned around and started doing my own thing, because that was just not going to be helpful. He was throwing away a couch. It was an interesting moment. Anyway, nice dude, but totally useless as far as, me getting help from him. And then I kind of flagged down a dude that was going up to his apartment, and I was like, sorry to bother you, but do you have any idea where building 1 is? And he was like, well, and I was between these two buildings here. He's like, well, no, but I think it's probably this way. And I was like, yeah, I'm thinking that's probably right. And right then I got a text from the customer giving me a little bit more detail. She was trying to help me, but I was trying to use directions like north, south, east, and west. Because she's like, well, which entrance did you come in, the first or the second one? And I was like, okay. I responded to this. I came in through the west one, closest to this cross street that's over here. Right? There's another street over here that goes north-south. So I named this street, and I said it was west. So there's like kind of two references there. So one of those two she's going to know. Also, if she's having trouble with north, south, east, west, that should help orient her so that she can actually start telling me in a north, south, east, west sort of sense, because that's what I'm asking, because, you know, left, right doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything when you don't know which direction to face. And if you know which direction to face, then you should just be telling me the directions in the first place, right? You should just be using this in the first place. So yeah, I say I came in through the west gate, and the closest to this cross street here, and no response that was relevant to that. But they told me that it was by the maintenance building, and the dude's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, the maintenance building is over here." His directions about it weren't very specific. I just got the sense that it was somewhere along this side. So I was like, okay, I'll go back. So I go back around, and it's seriously like probably 3/4 of a mile drive around. It's a long drive. But if I go out here, I can't get back in without going to the call box again. And I know that the customer is out of the apartment trying to wave me down. So I'm not going to be able to use the call box because it's going to call the apartment, not the cell phone. So it's not going to work. Call box isn't going to work for me, so I'm not going to be able to get back in. So yeah, this is one of where it's amazing because it's not really anybody's fault. It's just kind of everything went wrong in a really weird way. So I come back, and the customer tells me, like, I'll send my kids out. I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking probably older, like teens, because there was no indication that the adult was going to be with the children. So as I'm coming down here, I see two small children, like about 5 or 6 years old, along with one of their parents. And so it crosses my mind that this might be them, but I'm looking for building 1, and I'm like, at this point, I'm like right here. So I'm like, well, I would expect building 1 to be over here somewhere, right? So, because it should count up this way. It looks like it's counting like this, right? It looks like it's spiral. It's counting this way. So, and usually, like I've mentioned before, when you start counting, you actually always start at 0. You pick a starting point and you go from there, right? A reasonable starting point would be one of these spots right next to the gate. So I know there's several buildings over here. So I'm thinking this one that I didn't see is probably building 1. So my first plan of action is to go all the way around. So I'm expecting to see teenage children alone, no adult, out waiting in front of a building over here. Or maybe, if they're counting strangely, something over in this area, right? Because you're probably going to count from this wall, right? Well, I get over here, and so I'm like about here, and I see that this is building 2, and this is building 3, and then I look, and this is building 4. So I was like, oh, shit, okay. So I come back to here, and finally, I can see that this is building 1. And one of the real problems with seeing these numbers at night, one, they're very high off the ground. They're at about at least 15 or so feet off the ground. Because they're about a little more than halfway up the second floor. So you've got the full first floor, which is roughly going to be around 10 feet, and then another 5 or so feet above that. it's pretty high, so it's out of the beam of your headlights, and the color of the numbers, it's basically the same color as the paint of the building. It's just slightly darker, right? Like, the building is kind of like a beige color, and the number is like kind of a mid-tone tan. So there's not a whole lot of contrast there. And the number 1, it's skinny, because they have it, the way that it's written, it's like this. So it's very slender. So there's it hides very easily. Like, any of the other numbers is much easier to see because they're fatter, right? There's more to actually see. But these skinny numbers, 11 is kind of difficult to see because it's just 2 of these. But even that, it's easier because there are 2 of them. Right? This one, it's really hard. You have to figure out where exactly to look in the dark to find this low contrast number. So I get there, and I'm like, okay, I found building 1, and I step out, and I see these kids, and they come up to me, and they're like, oh, is that... And then they name the food, and I'm like, okay, yeah, these are the right kids. So, like, there was a little bit of weirdness in the way that the client was communicating with me, and there was some difficulties because I'm using cardinal directions, and they're using left and right, and that doesn't really work. Cardinal directions always work in navigation, left and right sometimes work in a specific context when the cardinal directions are already nailed down, but when you're actually just lost, you need the cardinal directions to fix it. So it's kind of a problem that this wasn't. This isn't something that most people know for some reason anymore. Like, it's really common for me to run into people that have no sense of north, south, east, west. And it's really frustrating because you can't give good directions without this, right? Because, so say you give a path along roads, well, if you make a mistake somewhere, this is how you get yourself back. This is what you do to get yourself back. You use this, right? If you get lost, you need this. Because your instructions along the road aren't going to work anymore. Your instructions along the road only work so long as you're doing it perfectly. As soon as you screw up, you have to have this. Anyway, so I found it, and as noted, it is next to the maintenance shed, which the dude over here sort of helpfully indicated was along this wall somewhere, but he didn't really say, like, it was in a corner, it was in this corner, or it was in this corner. He didn't tell me anything like that. I don't know that he knew. But he did have a vague indication that it was this way, and that was helpful to me, so, like, I am appreciative to that dude. Thank you. It's like, that is helpful. But, a little bit more detailed information would have been nice. Is it in the northwest corner? Is it in the southwest corner? Is building 1 on the west side of the complex? Or the east side of the complex? These sort of information would be nice to know. And I don't know, I personally find it amazing that somebody can not know the directions within their own house. Like, the building that you live in, you don't know which of your walls is the north wall. You don't know whether your door faces east or west or north or south. That's bafflingly bizarre to me. I don't understand how you could live like that. That's just weird. I don't understand how you could be disoriented in your own home. I don't know. But apparently a lot of people live that way. Anyway, I think at this point you can see the weirdness of this numbering system, because you're either entering over here or over here, and none of these entrances are next to building 1. It starts counting way the fuck over here. And then it counts around, and it counts through the entrances. What is this? What the hell? What the hell? And this is the same, as noted before, this is the same complex where they'll have even an odd split. But if it's a 3-story building, there's a hallway between the even and odd, so that you can actually go through between them. But some of the buildings are only 2 stories, so you have to. Your only choice is to walk around. Weird. This is weird. Why are we counting this way? Why does this start counting in the southwest corner? What the hell? And then it makes like a spiral. Why? What the fuck? And you know, here's the office. The office is over here, right? So a lot of times the office is next to building 1. So when I came over here, I was like, oh, there's the office. I've got to be close. And I'm thinking it was probably that first one that I just didn't see the number. Because that's near the office. It's near the gate. Everything, like, reasonable is indicating, yeah, that's probably building 1 right there. I don't know why this would be building 5 and that's 6 and that's 7. That is disturbing me while I'm over here at this point where I like just spoke to the Mexican dude. That is disturbing that this is 5, because why would this be 5 if that's 1? But it feels like that should be 1. Nope. The disturbing feeling was right. What the hell? What the hell?